This is video 2 to Jesse Glover's book, Between Wing Chun and Jeet Kune Do, about his time and instruction from the late great martial artist Bruce Lee on Wing Chun and other styles, and then probably Jeet Kune Do as his student. These are photos from their day in the 1960s. On the left we have a photo of Skip Ellsworth, Jesse Glover and Bruce Lee at the 1961 World Trade Fair. On the right, the author, Jesse Glover, and Bruce clowning around, probably at the apartment that he stayed in or somewhere else. Figure 3 shows an upward thrust of the hands and a kick to the groin or knee. This was Bruce Lee's favourite response to an attack in 1959. And standing from left to right, Pat Hooks, Bruce Lee, Ed Hart and the author, Jesse Glover. Kneeling from left to right are Taki Kimura, Charlie Wu and Leroy Porter. Bruce Lee in the Wing Chun stance. From left to right, the author, Jesse Glover, Bruce Lee, Ed Hart and Howard Hall. Figure 2 shows the alternate punching that was one of the basic moves of Bruce's earlier style. Both fists are thrown at the opponent's head in a long oval shaped pattern, one after the other until he is down and out. It's a classic Wing Chun punch. From left to right, the author, Jesse Glover, Bruce Lee, Howard Hall and Pat Hooks. From left to right, Masafusa Kimura, unknown judo player, Ron Mackey, Fred Sato, the author, Jesse Glover, Bruce Lee and Skip Ellsworth. Kneeling is Ed Hart. That's probably this guy here. From left to right, Masafusa Kimura. Oh, where is he? There, right there. Bruce Lee and the author, Jesse Glover. And here is a poster that was done in 1960 by Bruce Lee for one of his demonstrations, one of their demonstrations. And here's some more photos of Bruce Lee and his students. Bruce Lee in Eagle Claw stance, Bruce going through a form. Gonna look nerdy there, right? And glasses and everything. And there's Bruce Lee and his students clowning around. This guy doesn't seem to notice. Figure 1. This is one response to an incoming punch. The fingers are thrust forward. The opponent's eyes. The fingers are thrust toward the opponent's eyes, and any slowing or stopping of this forward movement is met with an upward thrust of the elbow, which will deflect the opponent's fist. There's Bruce Lee and the author, and Howard Hall and Pat Hooks, probably at their residence. Bruce Lee in the middle of a form. Okay, there's some really good information here about different people that Bruce Lee met, like Ao Long, etc., who first introduced him to Wing Chun Kung Fu. When he first came to Seattle, Bruce told Jesse Glover that he was the 6th best person in the Wing Chun style and that his greatest desire was to become number 1. His major problem in accomplishing this goal was how to become more skillful than the 5 people who were above him by using the same techniques that they had used. He realized that these people had taken years to reach their skill levels and that he was going to have to develop modifications that circumvented the classical techniques. The first step that he took was to examine all the boundaries that the style set up as being essential to its application. Then he took several of the things that were banned by the style and forged them into a technique that worked against the style's classical defense. He was able to do this because his high school level in Wing Chun and his flexible thinking, which allowed him to objectively study the weaknesses of the styles of attack and defences. Like he went up against, remember reading that he went up against one guy that's training him higher level, and he kept doing this move where he ended up scratching Bruce's chest, and it got really annoying, it was aggravating him. So he went home and he practiced it, and then he realised he could do a 45-degree angle and intercept this man, and he did that next time they were training, and he was scratching that guy's chest. Right? That's how determined how good he was in modifying the thing, because he found that there was always from A to B, so he decided, well, he could go change your stance, your movement slightly, your angle slightly, come at him from an angle, because this guy was always practicing straight forward, A to B all the time, and it's very linear. So he worked out, oh, if I go on an angle, I can avoid his attack and hit him from that angle, and it worked. Bruce believed that there's always someone who can beat you in a fight if the circumstances are right, and that to walk around thinking that you can't be beat is a foolish mistake that can end your life. Unfortunately, this isn't a popular concept in the minds of many martial arts people. The path that Bruce Lee followed was to live each day with the knowledge that he could be defeated by an expert or a novice at any given time. Like Dan and Santa, when they were sparring, he managed to clip him on the jaw or something, just out of pure luck. He made Bruce Lee aggro. Right. But because he had the sort of the ego in that direction, right, that he could be touched, no one could land a punch on him, but you know, it was just a sparring accident, mere chance. Okay. He thought himself invincible, apparently. So you got to be careful with everything you read. Like we've just shown that somebody on one of the videos said Bruce Lee really hated Tai Chi. This is why he hated Tai Chi. But in reading his books, these books properly, you'll find that he's not saying he hated it. He just thought, well, you know, it took too long to master in a real fight situation where he needed something that was like immediate and effective, you know. So he'd come out on top. But he, as we stated in the other video, he did love certain parts of Tai Chi because it was flowing, etc., etc. That's what he was telling Jesse Clover. The power of Bruce Lee's punch was one of the things that made him so formidable. When Jesse Glover first met him, he had a 6-inch punch which could send someone 100 pounds heavier flying through the air. His punch got strong with practice, and the distance that he could send a person flying increased as the distance that the punch could be delivered from decreased. Eventually he could get the same result by starting a punching with his fist held against you. One day when Bruce was visiting, Ramon came to his house, to Jesse's house. He had told him about Bruce's 1-inch punch, and he said that he couldn't see how anyone could get any power into a 1-inch punch. Later that night, while they were standing outside, Ramon asked Bruce about his punch and said that he couldn't see how anyone could get power out of such a short punch. Bruce said that he would be happy to show him, and next thing that Ramon knew, he was up and over the hood of Bruce's car. Ramon said that it was quite an experience that he still remembers today. One minute he was on the ground, and next minute he was sitting on the hood of Bruce's car 5 feet away. When Jesse first met Bruce, he was always testing the power of his punch by having Jesse hold a pillow draped over his forearms, which he would punch. He would hold his forearms together to form a backstop, but no matter how hard he held them together, his fist would always break through and send them crashing into the wall. The same night that Bruce sent Ramon flying over the hood of his car was the same night he showed both of them some movies he had brought back from Hong Kong. The movies showed Wing Chun students of Ao Hing fighting people from other styles. One of the fights was between a Wing Chun man and a man from the Praying Mantis, and the other fight was between a Wing Chun man and a man from the Choi Li Foot style. The first fight was on a rooftop, and the second fight was in the basement of a large building. When the first fight began, the Wing Chun man rushed in and knocked the Mantis man down. The Mantis man got up. The Wing Chun man's punches were fast but not very powerful, and the Wing Chun man rushed in and knocked him down for the second time. The Mantis man got up for the second time, and the Wing Chun man punched him backwards until he was draped over a firewall. He was still punching the man about the head when the fight was stopped. The second fight was better than the first because both contestants were strong punchers. The fight began with each man waiting for the other to move. Finally, the Choi Li Foot man attacked and the Wing Chun man backed out of range. The swings of the Choi Li Foot man were very strong and the Wing Chun man stayed on the defensive until his opponent overextended himself. The Choi Li Foot man made the mistake of pausing too long between moves and the Wing Chun man rushed in and straight punched him across the room and into one of the building's support pillars. The Choi Li Foot man was trapped against the pillar and the Wing Chun man kept punching him. The Choi Li Foot man's head was slammed against the post with every punch and he was bleeding from the nose and ears. Some of the onlookers finally jumped in and stopped the fight. The men in the film were beginners, but Bruce said that they should give Jesse some idea of the effectiveness of the style. He said that Ao Hing had a lot of pride and that he made sure that all his students would stand and fight by forcing them to stand toe to toe and trade punches with boxing gloves, and so forth. Jesse talks about Bruce Lee's punch. One time when he was at Bruce's school in the University District, he watched him send a 230-pound man flying through the air. His girlfriend happened to be with him at the time, and the impression of the man, Jesse's girlfriend, flying through the air is still in her mind. He hadn't been around Bruce for a long time, but he had been bragging to his girlfriend about how fantastic he was. When she first saw 5'7.5", 140-pound Bruce, all she could say was, "What's so great about him?" When she saw the big man bounce off the wall, her whole attitude changed. The man had a look of frozen terror on his face as he flew 8 feet through the air and crashed into a wall. After his surprising experience, the only thing that the man could say was, I see. Bruce had been sitting down when the man first approached him. He said that he had practiced Silumga and that he couldn't see how Bruce could get any power the way that he punched. Bruce said that he would be happy to show him. In the next instant, the man was bouncing off the wall. During the next few months, Bruce came over to Jesse's house quite often, and his girlfriend got a close hand look at him flying about the living room. Jesse flying across the living room. He broke every piece of furniture that he had during those sessions, and on one occasion, he offered to teach his girlfriend, but she wasn't interested. In his quest to gain flexibility, Bruce tried all the exercises that he could find in old Kung Fu books. He used several of the photos and illustrations in these books as goals to shoot for. He was particularly impressed with some of the photos that he saw in a book on the eagle claw. One of the pictures showed a man doing a splits with his toe in his mouth. Another photo showed a man standing with one foot touching the top of his head while he stood balanced on the other foot. While Jesse's not sure that Bruce would have liked to have been able to demonstrate the same kind of flexibility, he often said that overstretching the legs could result in ligaments that wouldn't support the legs in a proper manner. Bruce started out using heel kicks and toe kicks. He tried kicking to the side but didn't like the idea that the kick had to land at just the right moment or it wouldn't work. He bought a number of Kung Fu books on stretching back from Canada and began training his students in the practice of leg and body stretching. This was around the time that Jesse stopped working out at his school because he believed in the methods that he had first taught. Him and couldn't see any good reason to change him. Another factor that pushed him away from practice was Bruce saying that he wasn't sure that what he wanted to teach people, that he wanted to teach people what he was doing, and that he was in the process of hiding the real techniques of his method. Bruce was still teaching the general techniques, but not the ways to make them effective. He was no longer teaching the concepts that a man could take and build on for himself. Bruce started to seriously train the leg with a double toe kick. He trained his kick by kicking at an air shaft on the ceiling in the basement of Edison Technical High School. The shaft was about 7 feet high, and Bruce would take a crack at it every day when him and Jesse arrived at school. When he first started kicking, he was a long way from touching the vent, but day by day he came closer until one day he finally touched it. From that day forward, he was able to kick the vent with ease. The primary event that changed Bruce's concept of kicking took place at a judo tournament in Tacoma, Washington. The Air Force was having their judo championships, and during the intermission there was a karate demonstration by Hidetake Nishiyama and another karate man from Roseburg, Oregon. This is the first time that either of us, of him and Bruce, had seen karate performed by a leading practitioner. The man from Oregon looked to be about 6 foot or better, and Jesse then thought that he was a second degree in karate. Hidetake Nishiyama was 5th degree and is introduced as the best of Japan's young karate man. The demonstration began with him doing a form which was done with a kind of grace and beauty that Jesse is yet to see repeated. After the form, he demonstrated individual techniques. First, they would announce what Nishiyama was going to do and give the purpose of the move. Next, he would do the move in 2 parts. The first part was done in slow motion so that everyone had a chance to see what was going to take place. The second part was done at top speed and was hardly visible. The most impressive part of the demonstration was the control that Nishiyama demonstrated when he showed crescent kicks to the head. He effortlessly cranked his foot up to the level of his helper's head and held it there while the announcer talked about the use of the kick. From the same position, he retracted the leg and sent it flying back to a spot an inch from his helper's temple. This was the greatest display of body control that Jesse had ever seen. Not only was he impressed, but so was Bruce Lee. After the demonstration, Bruce went to talk to Nishiyama. He never did say what transpired, but later he saw Nishiyama showing some moves to his helper that looked like something that Bruce would do. He was demonstrating these moves to his helper in a way that looked as though he didn't think too much of them. Bruce never did talk about what had happened between him and Nishiyama, and he never asked. One thing that Jesse was sure of is that Bruce was impressed with Nishiyama's kicking because he talked about it all the way home. When Jesse asked Bruce where he thought that Nishiyama stood on the scale that he used to measure the skill of other people, he said that Nishiyama was about to pass through the gate that separates those who are good from those who are great. Nishiyama's body control was the thing that had the greatest effect on Bruce. When you watched him move his legs, you couldn't help but wish that you could move the same way. After they got back from the demonstration, all that Bruce could talk about was developing control of his legs. He started to train that very night toward the development of the same kind of focus and control that they had witnessed at the demonstration. He was determined to develop Nishiyama's flexibility and power in his legs. Bruce got all of the available karate books on how to train and stretch the legs, and devoted several hours a week to leg practice. His first attempts to develop a focused kick were to the front. When he started to seriously train the legs, he discovered that the inside of his legs was so bound up that he couldn't stretch out. Jesse can remember a time when it was difficult for him to bend over and touch his toes. He had an old Kung Fu exercise book that said to stretch the legs by developing the ability to touch the head on the thighs. When Bruce first tried this exercise, he wasn't able to come close, and it took several months before he could do it. Bruce began stretching by touching the floor with his fingers tips and progressed towards touching it with his elbows. He definitely had no special advantage when it came to stretching out, and it was the same painful process for him that it is for most of us. The fact that Wing Chun used no stretching exercises worked against him, and the time that he had spent developing a fast close had tightened up his legs until they were almost impossible to stretch. His later development of a side kick was also limited by the hard muscles in his legs. Every time that he kicked to the side, he said that it hurt like hell, unless he turned his supporting foot in the opposite direction. This foot position later became a permanent characteristic of his kick. So everyone out there who thinks they can duplicate exactly what Bruce Lee did, try that one. Try what he did. bend over to touch your toes, to touching the floor with your fingertips, and then progress towards touching it with your elbows. Wow. It's pretty hard, isn't it? Difficult. You just go back and have a look at that again, just in case we worded it wrong. Bruce began his stretching by touching the floor with his fingertips and progressed toward touching it with his elbows. You go back again because it seems impossible. Where's it coming from? Okay, got all the available karate books on how to train, stretch the legs, and devote several hours a week to practice. The first attempts to develop the quickest kick were to the front. He started to train the legs seriously. The inside of his legs were bound up. It was difficult for him to. There was a time when it was difficult for him to bend over and touch his toes. But he had an old kung fu exercise book that said to stretch the legs by developing the ability to touch the head to the thighs, on the thighs. When Bruce first tried the exercise, he wasn't able to come close, and it took several months before he could do it. So he had problems too, right? When he first started to try these things. And he found ways through books, etc., to overcome that. Okay, some more problems here. Last time that Bruce Lee went back to Hong Kong while he was still living in Seattle, he said that Yip Man had been holding out on him. Some things he wasn't telling him, right? Bruce said that Yip Man had a secret method of tying up the legs that he didn't know about, that Bruce Lee had no idea about. When he had left for Hong Kong, leg training was the foremost thing in his mind, and he returned with a new way to close on a kicker without getting kicked. Bruce said that Yip Man had told him that the best way for him to train the leg was to practice holding it in the hanging horse position. The weight is supported on one leg while the other leg is held extended in front of you. When he returned from Hong Kong, he did a lot of this leg extension in order to develop a strong and functional kick. When Bruce first began this exercise, he could hardly hold his leg knee high. After several weeks of practice, he was able to hold it waist high, but only for a few seconds. Later, he was able to hold it out to the front longer by pointing his toe. Jesse never did see him hold out his leg to the side. The side kick extension was something that he got into after he went to California. When Jesse saw a picture of him in the 1964 tournament of LA, he saw that he was using a half side, half back kick. Part of the reason for this unique kick was a bad ankle, which prevented him from doing the kick in the conventional way. While Jesse was around Bruce, he only used a side kick to the knee. He learned the slow side kick from Richard Leon, a leading Tour de footman who had a beautiful low side kick. During his earlier years, Bruce was strongly influenced by the principles of Wing Chun, which dictated that the best way to attack was to the front. It wasn't until later, when he had learned to move in any direction, that he changed his concept. Part of this change was due to Richard's influence. Richard could kick and move with equal skill in any direction, and his ability in this area didn't escape Bruce's keen perception. Bruce's ankle injury made him stand a lot more erect than he would have liked to have stood. Both Richard and Fook Yong were able to attack and defend from a low stance, and Bruce would have liked to have been able to follow in their footsteps. He said that low stances were better because it was difficult to stop attacks that angle up and to punch down through someone's arm. Jim, or James DeMille, ran into Bruce when he was coming out with his book, The Philosophical Art of Self-Defense. Bruce told Jim that if we wanted to be in it, we should be up at Ruby Chow's restaurant on the day that he was going to take the pictures. They both thought that it would be kind of cool to be in the book, so they called him up and told him that they'd be there. The shooting was done in the parking lot next to the Ruby Chow restaurant. The photographer was a friend of Bruce's from Hong Kong who was taking a watch repair course at Edison Tech. The pictures were shot in front of a fence that divided the lot from the restaurant. Most of the techniques in the book are from other styles and not Wing Chun. One funny thing that Jesse can remember about the book was the hard time that Bruce had posing for the front cover picture. His front leg was held extended in front of him, and just about the time that the photographer was ready to take the picture, something went wrong. The guy was trying to hurry and correct the flaw, and Bruce kept yelling, "Hurry up and fix the damn thing before my leg falls off." This was right after Bruce had learned to hold his leg extended in front of him, but he couldn't hold it for long. Most of the techniques in the book were off the top of Bruce's head. He would say that he wanted one guy to do this and one guy to do that, and then he would have the cameraman take the picture. His primary reason for doing the book was that he needed the money that he hoped to receive from its sale. He told Jesse that James Lee in Oakland had suggested to him that he write a book. James was sure that a book would make money for Bruce. Bruce paid $600 to have the book printed. And told him that told Jesse he received $5,000 from its sale. Bruce always kept records of the things that he discovered, and he said that someday he was going to write a book called The Tao of Kung Fu. He said that the book would tell the average person how they could become strong at Kung Fu. Bruce felt that once a person achieved a fair level of proficiency in straight punching and sticking, that he would be able to hold his own against most opponents once he made the initial contact. He often emphasized the truth of this concept was a demonstration of how helpless Jesse was against his sticking. He was really working hard to master sticking hands, but could never come close to touching Bruce. This is Jesse. Was working really hard to master sticking hands with Chisao, but he could never come close to Bruce, touching Bruce Lee, unless he let him. In his later teachings, he glossed over sticking and straight punching and didn't seem to stress them to most of his students. Even though Jesse could never touch Bruce in sticking hands, he could make the concept work against his other students. Bruce liked to leave out parts of things to let students figure out what was missing. Often he felt that he didn't want anyone to follow his path because he made it clear that a person was going to have to be strongly in his corner before he would reveal his best techniques. As time passed, he became less and less inclined to give out basic conceptual information to anyone. Bruce's power was so great that he could effectively strike an opponent from any position. At his final level of development, he could have defended or attacked using any kind of movement and been successful. In a fight, Bruce's major weapons of attack would be his hands, which were faster than his feet. In his movies, he used the same kind of close with his legs that he had with the hands, but Jesse still thought that his hands were the most dangerous thing about him, although he can see from his movies that he finally developed the kinds of kicks that are effective against someone who is big and tough. When he first met Bruce in 1959, his kicks weren't very strong. They would have been uncomfortable if they had landed on the knee or the groin, but they were used by Bruce more as supplementary weapons than as primary weapons. He used them to create openings for his hands. It wasn't until 1962 that Bruce got into using the leg as a primary attack weapon. In 1973, Bruce could have seriously hurt anyone in the world with a kick, but his real killing weapon was still his fist. People don't get the kind of speed and power that is required in effective Kung Fu from just doing techniques. Bruce's power was a result of his body development, which he pushed to such a high level that he was approaching maximum human tolerances. His ligament and tendon strength was stronger than that of normal athletes because of the hundreds of thousands of movements that he had done against different kinds of pressure, weights, springs, bodies in gravity. His muscle tone was such that when he flexed his arm, the muscles were as hard as stone. This maximum development in muscle tone enabled Bruce to push for their maximum level of development. Everyone doesn't have to develop the same strength that Bruce did, but they do have to strengthen certain areas of their body until these areas are stronger than comparable areas on stronger people. Most of these areas are generally underdeveloped on even the most highly trained athletes. Bruce's arm muscles were more developed than those of a first-class gymnast, and his elbow joints had more ligament and tendon strength than a world-class weightlifter. His tendon strength far exceeded the muscle strength that he applied in his punching. Yet this specific area development was something that he seldom taught to his students. Most of his students that Jesse talked with seemed to feel that doing a move long enough will someday result in you doing it like Bruce. The truth of the matter is that repetitious movement is no longer adequate once you reach a point where you are making no further strength and speed gains. Some kind of overload system must be used to build up the basic material, muscles, tendons and ligaments that you are working with. With each new gain in strength, it is necessary to return to the basic repetitions until you reach another stick point. This process must be repeated over and over again if you want to excel in martial arts. Part of what determines the level of development that you obtain is your ability to come up with new and different ways to increase strength and power after conventional ways have been exhausted. The hard work and dedication that this kind of effort requires prevents most people from becoming good martial artists. The fact that few people have ever considered this kind of training concept is another thing that prevents the development of really skillful martial artists. The only reason that Jesse learned about how Bruce really developed himself was because of the close interaction that he had with him and the need that he had to show someone what he was developing and get feedback about his training methods. Bruce's techniques got better and better as he learned more about how to develop power through proper body mechanics. He often said that all he could do in the area of teaching other people was point them in the right direction. Bruce's real secrets were in the use of power once it had been developed and how to increase it through better body mechanics. So there's some good advice there. And if you really liked this video, then give us a like, subscribe to us, add your comments below the video, and then share this video with family, friends and others.